I guess like we were both pretty adamant on wanting to study abroad, and we would like do whatever it took to get there. I think it felt like a lot of people around us didn't agree with that. Hi guys! I am with my sister, Kim, and we both studied abroad in the States. So we're both from the Philippines, we grew up here. She is, how old are you?
I'm 26 years old.
Okay, great. I'm 21. I really want to start this new series with my sister because I feel like we've learned so much.
I went to college in Northwestern University, which is about 30 minutes north from Chicago in a suburb called Evanston.
And I went to Cornell in upstate New York. Just graduated, so I thought it would also be really cool to do this series where both of us can unpack our experience studying abroad. We're 4 to 5 years apart. We've also gone to different parts of the States. This video, we wanted to start with the basics of why we decided to study abroad, how we prepared for it, and also whether we think it's worth it or not. And then in future videos, we want to talk more about the actual college experience, so things like culture shock, dealing with racism, loneliness, homesickness, and then even after with what it was like graduating and deciding what to do next, you know, whether to come back home or whether to continue working in the States. But stay tuned for that in future weeks. Today, I have some questions from you guys from Instagram, which you asked at AlohaKDX. First question we have is, how did your sister get the opportunity to live in such cool cities?
Sure, so by the time I graduated, I was able to live in 4 different metropolitan cities besides Manila, and those were Chicago, New York, San Francisco, and London. I kind of did it all in 1 year. During my junior year, I applied for a study abroad program in London because I was kind of tired of Evanston a little bit. It's a little bit boring because there are a lot of old people, it's like suburban, and I kind of wanted to explore the world. So I applied to a study abroad program in London, and I got to study in King's College London. Took a lot of literature classes, Greek, art and architecture, British history, so that was super fun. I went back to Chicago after my study abroad. After that, I had gotten into a program that my school had sort of started that kind of focused on the intersection between media, entrepreneurship, and engineering. And they had just opened a new satellite campus in San Francisco. And I had applied to the program and was one of 10 people who got in. So I spent a quarter there, which was 3 months. After that, I had gotten an internship in New York. So after living in San Francisco, I went to New York for about 3 months where I interned in a media company. So that was kind of how I got to live in all those different cities.
Yeah, in comparison, I've lived in one city, Ithaca. I ended up just staying in Ithaca, New York, which is where Cornell is. Very rural, very opposite from all the metropolitan cities that you said.
There's a lot of farms in Ithaca, a lot of vineyards, wineries,
Finger Lakes, very naturey. I knew going to Cornell that I would be in the middle of nowhere, that I would really have to make it a home, and so instead of, I guess, looking around at all the other options, I was more like, this is what's in front of me, I'm going to make it work, I'm going to see the beauty in what's in front of me.
Yeah, I think I was very hungry for experience and really wanted to see the world. I think I kind of wanted to be a travel blogger at one point. I also wanted to try living in different cities because I thought that if I want to stay abroad and not come back home after I graduated, I wanted to give those cities that I thought had potential a test run.
Also, which program did you study?
I studied journalism and economics at Northwestern and had a certificate in entrepreneurship.
Nice. And I did information science with a minor in creative writing. Okay, did you guys plan early on in high school about studying abroad? And did you ever consider studying in the Philippines?
I always wanted to study abroad. I think because growing up, my parents were pretty conservative and restrictive, and I couldn't really go out a lot. I couldn't wear...
Same. Our parents!
Right. It's true, we have the same set of parents. But they treated you a little bit differently.
Thanks to my sister, older sister.
Yeah, so I couldn't wear clothes like this. We went to an international school, and very few people decided to study here in the Philippines.
That said, we both did apply to schools in the Philippines. And in terms of planning, yes, we did. I would say starting sophomore year, I took the TOEFL, which is the English proficiency test that a lot of international students have to take if you want to study in the States. And then we also, junior year, took the SAT, ACT, which is also the college admissions test for the States, but I think it might be more optional now because of the pandemic. And then by senior year, I think we were pretty focused on just grinding out college apps to 10 schools.
Yep.
I have more videos on that, by the way. I actually have a ton of videos on college admissions if you want to watch that. A ton. Okay, main question of the video. Was studying abroad worth it?
Pros and cons, and then
Yeah.
our conclusion,
Yeah.
like a essay.
Uh,
Introduction, paragraph 1, 2, 3.
I think the first thing is discovering your potential, but also your limitations. It was really eye-opening because going abroad, I could join as many extracurriculars, take as many classes as I wanted in whatever field. And I felt like my mind expanded so much in academics, but also socially. I met such a wide diversity of people, you know, hanging out with people from like different countries, different upbringings, different values, socioeconomic status, like everything. On the flip side, though, I feel like how I was able to grow that much also came at the cost of sometimes pushing my limits to a point of overworking, overexerting myself, trying to do too many things. That quickly, I don't know, took a toll on health, well-being, work-life balance. The only way I was able to get to where I am now, which is my like comfortable spot, is by knowing both of the extremes.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it was worth it. It was something that I wanted to do. I really wanted the freedom. I really wanted the independence. I really wanted to explore the world beyond, you know, my hometown and where I grew up. The first thing that comes to mind, or one of the topmost things, is like intellectual stimulation. I think you get exposed to just a wide variety and breadth of different opinions, different fields. Like at Northwestern, people were super multifaceted. There were people who were into like robotics and cello performance, or people who were into journalism and biology and science. So it really opened my mind to like different possibilities and different fields of study that I never really encountered. And I think the caliber of teaching and instruction is really excellent, especially in the program that I was in, which was journalism. I got to study under like Pulitzer Prize winning journalists and New York op-ed columnists. I don't think that I would have gotten the same opportunity had I studied here at home.
Okay, my second point is a new environment. I touched on this earlier, but I grew up in a super trafficked, densely populated, tropical, hot, humid city in Southeast Asia. And I would never have gotten the opportunity to study in rural, upstate New York. 4 seasons, cold, freezing winters, but also pretty hot summers, if not for university. One way that my friend put it, which I thought summarized really well, was Ithaca is one of the rare places where you can have the diversity of a city, like New York City, San Francisco, but be surrounded by nature.
Second point was going to be the diversity of people, which I sort of already touched upon, but it was more in terms of finding like-minded people. I kind of matched with my friends in high school based more off of like how we studied and how we kind of approached like talking to teachers or whether or not we partied rather than things we really liked. Like for example, in college I found friends who had the same music tastes that I did, who liked the same books, had the same kind of taste in films, who kind of also wanted to explore the world and were like hungry for different experiences, and who kind of read the same like articles that I did. It was so weird. My freshman year roommate, shout out to Tiffany, we would literally get the same newsfeed Atlantic articles or New York Times articles, and we'd be like, hey, did you read that article about like whatever, the psychology of beauty? And she'd be like, yeah, I totally did. So that was really cool. Just like the people that you get exposed to, the different ideas, different religions, the debates that you have.
Going off that, my third point is cultural appreciation of your own culture. If we had attended a local school, we might not have really been pushed to understand our own culture because we were just surrounded by everyone of similar upbringing, so it wouldn't even cross my mind to think about that. But because I got to go to the States and live in a totally different culture myself, I was like, whoa, I had to start confronting how I was raised and even like separate, like, this is the way because of my family, this is the way because of culture, this is the way because of my country. I think that comes with studying abroad or just having space from wherever you grew up. Every time I went back home after that, I actually got more and more curious about my home culture.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think I had the same experience. The first couple of years I was just focused on figuring out who I was outside of where I grew up. I have no real problem with doing things on my own. Like, I'll go watch a movie on my own, I'll go to a concert on my own. And I was not able to do any of that here at home because I think one of it was like social perception, right? It's like, why would you do that alone? People will think you're a loner or whatever. And then safety also. My parents were always like, oh, don't go alone, something might happen to you. So having the freedom to kind of explore those things on my own was very liberating. Yeah, I don't know. I think you just get to see different sides of yourselves that you wouldn't have otherwise if you stayed in the same place that you were born and raised in. Only when you encounter different or new kind of like stimuli will you see how you react to those things.
Okay, so in conclusion, I think you have to be the one to first understand what the cost of going abroad is. This can be financial, this can be with family relationships, because some family members might not agree. This can also be work bonds. I know international students who studied abroad, but they have contracts with their government, so they'll have to come back and work 4 years. So you have to look at your own situation and see what the cost is to see whether it's worth it. Hopefully our answers gave you some insight into like what you could gain from it, but obviously everyone comes from a different background of what you will have to sacrifice to get this.
Yeah, I feel like I had no cons or bad things about studying abroad. I think, you lose the ability to sort of form connections locally and have that formative sort of college experience here in the Philippines. I didn't have that experience, and so there is like a gap when I kind of talk to people who studied here locally. It's like I can't talk about what classes we shared or what like professors we had or like the school culture or like school rivalries, that kind of thing.
I think for me, probably the biggest cost was like family relationships and strains, because I guess like we were both pretty adamant on wanting to study abroad, and we would like do whatever it took to get there. I think it felt like a lot of people around us didn't agree. That I think was hard on some relationships during college and even after. But now we're like both back in the Philippines and we're working to, I think, restore a lot of them. Last question. How do you handle misconceptions about your country?
It's interesting because a lot of people treat it as like a microaggression or get triggered. I don't really get offended because for me it's like they just don't know, probably. Like it's coming from a place of ignorance, and I can't really blame them because it's not like I know everything about all other cultures in the world. And I might have a misconception of like another country that I don't really know about besides like its name and where it is on the map. I just kind of answer any questions or misconceptions, just like how you would have any sort of conversation. I'd just be like, oh, actually it's like this.
One example that a lot of people ask me about is our presidents. Like we've had a lot of like controversial presidents, and I try to just give the other perspective of why people voted for him, why people didn't. My goal isn't to convince them or persuade them in one direction. It's more to just give them the information and then let them decide what they want to. I just hope that through me telling them, it can fill in some gaps that maybe Western media does not capture. Okay, well then those are all the questions for this video. Next video, we're going to talk about culture shock and dive more into racism, religion, and societal/cultural pressures in the States, which I think is another juicy topic. Next Saturday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time.
Stay tuned.
Yes, subscribe. And if you do want to ask us future questions, this is hopefully going to be a longer series on my channel where we can really dive into your questions. So if you want to ask, Instagram is at @LohoKittyX. Bye!
Bye.